Stop! Oh my God! Stop! Maya shouted, her voice barely audible above the thundering downpour as she slammed her foot on the brake pedal. The sickening sound of metal twisting and glass shattering had come just moments before. Through her rain-streaked windshield, she could just make out the dark outline of a black SUV crashing through the guardrail and plunging off Pine Grove Bridge. No, 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 she gasped, throwing her car into park and yanking her door open. The storm's fury hit her instantly, rain pelting her face like needles, wind whipping her jacket against her body. She sprinted forward, her boots slipping on the wet asphalt as her heart hammered against her ribs. When she reached the broken guardrail, Maya peered over the edge, and her stomach lurched. Below, in the swollen, angry waters of Oak Ridge River, the SUV was rapidly disappearing. Water had already swallowed the hood, and the cabin was filling fast. Through the driver's window, she could make out a shadowy figure, motionless behind the wheel. Before we continue with today's story, if you're enjoying what you've heard so far, please hit that subscribe button. Every new subscriber helps me keep sharing these inspiring tales that touch your day. Thank you for your support. Without hesitation, Maya scrambled over the damaged railing and down the steep embankment. Mud clung to her hands and clothes as she half slid, half climbed down the slope, grabbing at exposed roots and rocks to slow her descent. The relentless rain made every surface treacherous, every foothold uncertain. Reaching the churning river's edge, Maya took one deep breath and plunged in. The cold hit her like a physical blow, shocking her lungs and sending pain shooting through her limbs. The current immediately grabbed her, trying to drag her downstream, but she fought against it with powerful strokes, pushing toward the sinking vehicle. She reached the SUV just as water crept past the window line. The driver hadn't moved. Maya clutched the side mirror with one hand and pounded on the glass with her other. "Hey, can you hear me? Hey." No response. She tugged at the door handle, but it wouldn't budge. Gritting her teeth, she bent her elbow and smashed it against the window, once, twice, 3 times, until finally the glass shattered. Pain blazed across her arm from cuts, but adrenaline pushed her forward. She reached inside, grabbed the man's jacket, and pulled with all her strength. He was heavy, completely limp. "Come on," she grunted through clenched teeth. "Don't do this to me." With one final, desperate heave, she pulled him through the window opening. His body slid free, head lolling forward, a battered rancher's hat still clutched in his hand. They both went under immediately. Maya kicked upward frantically, lungs screaming for air, dragging his dead weight until they broke the surface. Gasping and coughing, she kicked toward the riverbank, fighting the current with every stroke. Each movement was agony, her muscles burning with effort as she pulled them both to safety. They collapsed on the muddy shore. Maya lay there for a moment, rain streaming down her face, her entire body trembling with exhaustion. Beside her, the man remained still. She rolled toward him quickly, pressing her fingers against his neck. A pulse, weak but present. "Hey," she said, gently tapping his cheek. "Hey, wake up. Don't you dare check out after I just risked my life for yours." He coughed suddenly, water spilling from his lips. His eyes opened just slightly, unfocused and confused. "You okay?" Maya asked, wiping rain from her own face. His lips parted, and he looked at her as though she were a dream. "Thank you," he whispered hoarsely. "I owe you everything." Before she could respond, his eyes fluttered closed again. Maya grabbed her phone with shaking hands and called 911, praying the water hadn't damaged it. She stayed with him, covering his body with her own jacket as best she could, trying to shield him from the merciless rain until sirens wailed in the distance. At the hospital, Maya gave her statement, explained what she'd witnessed and done. No one told her his name. He had no identification on him, and he hadn't spoken another word after that brief moment of consciousness. By morning, he was gone. Maya returned to the hospital the next day, carrying a small basket of homemade scones, but the nurse at reception shook her head. He checked himself out sometime after midnight. Didn't leave a name or contact information. Just vanished. She drove home in silence, strangely troubled by his disappearance. The intensity of his gaze when he'd thanked her, the way he'd clutched that old rancher's hat, even while unconscious. These details haunted her thoughts. Over the next few days, she recounted the rescue to her coworkers at Sweetland Bakery, to her best friend Zoe, even to the regular mail carrier. "Just a drifter," they all said with a shrug. "Lucky to be alive." "Let go, Maya," someone advised. "You did your good deed." She tried. She genuinely did. Until the 5th morning after the rescue, when she was arranging croissants in the front display case of her bakery. Glancing up through the window, she spotted him across the street. Not driving into town like some dramatic entrance, but simply standing there with a dolly stacked with grocery boxes, helping an elderly shopkeeper unload supplies into a tiny corner market. The hat was the same, weathered brown with a faded leather band. His jeans were cleaner now, his boots worn but sturdy. He moved efficiently, respectfully, with a deliberate attempt to avoid drawing attention. But it was unmistakably him. Their eyes met through the glass. This time, he didn't disappear. He smiled softly and tipped his hat to her. The name whispered around town wasn't his real one. Nobody knew that, and no one never volunteered it. Throughout Oak Ridge, he was simply the ranch hand or the guy in the brown hat. He began appearing everywhere. One morning, he was helping an elderly woman change a flat tire outside the local pharmacy. The next day, someone spotted him repainting the weathered fence surrounding the community church. Not because anyone had asked, but because it needed doing. A few afternoons later, he was seen carrying heavy grocery bags for a blind veteran who lived several blocks from Main Street. He never asked for payment or recognition, always dressed the same way. Simple button-down shirt tucked into worn jeans, scuffed boots, and that distinctive rancher's hat pulled low, shadowing his eyes. He kept to himself, but never came across as unfriendly. He had a particular way of nodding that made people feel acknowledged, a quiet presence that earned trust more effectively than any amount of charisma could. No one knew where he stayed or where he'd come from. Rumors flourished naturally. He was a ranch worker between jobs, a man escaping city life, someone starting over, but no one pressed the issue. The town had welcomed its share of wanderers before. Most just passed through. This one stayed. And then one day, he walked into Maya's bakery. It was a quiet Tuesday morning, the warm aroma of vanilla and fresh bread filling the cozy space. Maya was behind the counter, organizing a tray of cinnamon rolls, when the small bell above the door chimed softly. She looked up, and there he was, not through a window or across a street this time. He removed his hat respectfully as he entered, brushing a few raindrops from the brim. "Morning," he said, his voice low but pleasant. "Hi," Maya replied, surprised but composed. He looked around the bakery, taking in the neat displays of bread loaves and pastries. "Smells like childhood in here," he said with a slight smile. She raised an eyebrow. "Good memories, I hope?" "The very best kind." He ordered a dozen cinnamon rolls and a box of apple tarts, asking if they could be delivered to the Oak Ridge Senior Center. "Just tell them it's from a friend," he said, leaving enough money to cover twice the cost. Before leaving, he glanced at the counter, then at her name tag. "Maya," he said thoughtfully. "Thank you for that day at the river." She froze. "I haven't forgotten," he added, then tipped his hat and walked out. He still hadn't given his name. But that was the moment Maya stopped pretending she wasn't curious. He kept appearing, not just around town, but in her mornings. He'd pass by the bakery before opening hours, tapping gently on the glass and waving if she was inside preparing for the day. He started ordering small items, blueberry muffins, black coffee, sometimes a loaf of sourdough for a neighbor, and asking about her day. He listened attentively, not with the polite nods people give while waiting for their turn to speak, but with genuine interest. Noah listened like someone who needed the sound of another person's voice to stay grounded. He asked about her father, about her favorite books, about what kept her in Oak Ridge when so many young people had left for bigger places. And he never talked about himself. Every now and then, Maya would try, "So, where'd you learn to fix cars like that? Or have you always been so handy with paintbrushes?" He'd smile, maybe shrug, and gently redirect the conversation back to her. It was both infuriating and endearing. One morning, he brought her a paper cup of coffee before she opened the shop. "I figured you're always the one giving," he said. "Might be nice to receive for a change." They drank together on the bench outside the bakery, watching the town slowly come to life in the early light. "Why Oak Ridge?" she asked eventually. "You could be anywhere." He gazed toward the distant mountains. "Some places pull you back without you understanding why." She didn't press further. Their conversations became a ritual, brief, uncomplicated, unhurried. He'd always arrive first, quietly hold the door for customers, buy something small, and linger just long enough to leave a trace of warmth behind him. Though he remained mysterious, one thing became increasingly clear to Maya. This quiet stranger, with storms hidden behind his eyes and silence etched in his posture, wasn't merely passing through. He was searching for something, maybe even someone. When Noah asked if she wanted to attend the Oak Ridge Harvest Festival, Maya blinked in surprise. She was wiping down the display cases late one afternoon when he leaned against the counter with his characteristic half-smile and said, "I hear there's dancing and kettle corn." Interested, she hesitated, the cloth pausing on the glass. "You mean like a date?" He shrugged with casual charm. "You can call it whatever makes you say yes." Maya laughed despite herself. "All right, why not?" That Saturday evening, the town square glowed beneath strings of golden lights. Booths lined the walkways offering hot cider, roasted corn, handcrafted jewelry, and more varieties of pie than anyone could sample in one night. Children darted between adults, sticky-faced with candy apples, while folk music played from speakers near the gazebo. Maya arrived wearing a soft amber sweater and jeans, her dark hair falling in loose waves. Noah was already waiting, holding 2 steaming cups of cider. He wore a dark blue button-down over a simple white t-shirt, his rancher's hat tipped back slightly, and those same worn boots that somehow never seemed out of place. "You clean up nicely," she teased, accepting the cider. "You too," he replied, "though you always smell like vanilla." Occupational hazard. They wandered through the festival, stopping for grilled corn that they ate standing, laughing as butter dripped down their wrists. Noah tried the ring toss game and missed every target. Maya won a small stuffed fox at the dart booth and insisted he keep it tucked in his jacket pocket all evening. There was an unexpected ease between them. He never rushed their conversations or filled comfortable silences with needless chatter. Maya found herself talking more than usual about the bakery, about growing up in Oak Ridge, her favorite authors, and eventually about her father. "He died when I was 8, she said, fingers wrapped around her paper cup. "Heart attack while driving home from work. It happened so suddenly. My mom raised me by herself after that. She's the strongest person I've ever known, though her heart isn't in great shape these days either." Noah's expression softened, his hands tucked into his pockets. "That's a rough beginning for a child." It was, Maya acknowledged. "But Oak Ridge has a way of holding you when you're falling." He nodded, glancing across the square. "It does." Maya tilted her head. "You say that like someone who's fallen here before." He didn't answer immediately. They walked in silence for a few moments, passing the line for funnel cakes and caramel apples. Then the music shifted to an upbeat country tune, drawing several couples to dance beneath the strung lights. "Do you dance?" he asked suddenly. "I've been known to make the attempt." He extended his hand. "Let's find out." She took it, surprised by how naturally her fingers fit against his. They stepped into the swirling crowd, and though he remained quiet, he moved with confidence, guiding her gently, never missing a beat. The world around them blurred into lights and laughter. Maya's cheeks flushed for more than just the autumn air. She hadn't danced like this since high school, since life had grown serious. "You're good at this," she said. "Used to be," he replied. "Used to be when?" Noah smiled but didn't answer. Later, they sat on a bench near the edge of the square, sipping fresh cider and watching the thinning crowd. "You really do know everyone here," he observed. "Like you're woven into the fabric of the place." "I've lived here my entire life," she said. "I suppose the town grows around you after a while." He nodded thoughtfully. Maya studied his profile for a moment, then asked the question that had been lingering in her mind. "Have you lived here before?" Noah turned to her, something flickering across his expression. Surprise, perhaps, or something deeper. "You seem to know this place too well to be a newcomer," she continued. "You knew about Mrs. Thornton's broken steps before anyone mentioned them. You took that shortcut behind the library like you'd walked it 100 times. Have you?" A pause stretched between them. Then Noah offered a faint, almost sad smile. "I passed through. That's not what I asked." He looked away, his fingers tightening slightly around his cup. "Some things are easier left in the past." Maya frowned. "Why does that sound like you're hiding something?" Noah turned back to her, that gentle deflection still in his eyes. "Because maybe I am." She studied him for a moment, trying to read between the lines of his evasive answers. Then quietly, she said, "You don't have to tell me everything. Just don't pretend there's nothing to tell." Noah didn't reply. The music faded behind them. The lights twinkled overhead, but for the first time that night, the warmth between them cooled slightly, like a breeze slipping through a door left ajar. The bakery was quieter than usual that morning. Raindrops pattered softly against the window panes as Maya stood behind the counter, restocking pastry displays with practiced movements. Noah had come in early, as had become his habit, picking up 2 coffees and a box of scones for the folks at the shelter, as he put it. But today, something felt different. He had stepped outside to take a phone call, and though Maya hadn't intended to eavesdrop, His voice carried through the partially open door. I'll make the final decision by next week. Oak Ridge's future is on the line. Tell Everett Holdings to hold off until they hear directly from me. Her hands froze above the pastry tray. Everett Holdings. The name echoed in her mind like a warning bell. She ducked quickly out of sight, heart racing, thoughts whirling. Noah's voice dropped lower, and she couldn't catch anything else. But the damage was done. That name, she knew it. Everyone in Oak Ridge knew it. Everett Holdings was the real estate conglomerate that had been buying up half the county over the past decade, quietly acquiring land and businesses through various shell companies, including the deed to the property where her mother's house stood. She waited until Noah left, flashing her that easy, familiar smile and promising to see her tomorrow. She nodded, barely managing to return his smile. As soon as he disappeared from view, she pulled out her phone and searched frantically. Her fingers trembled as the results loaded. Noah James Everett, heir apparent, son of Richard Everett, the late founder, current acting executive, known for avoiding publicity and press appearances. A recluse, a mystery, a lie. He wasn't just some drifter who wandered into town. He owned it. That evening, Maya sat on the bench outside the bakery, arms folded across her chest, watching dusk settle over Oak Ridge. The storefronts flickered to life one by one. The rain had stopped, but a chill lingered in the air. Noah arrived right on time, holding 2 cups of coffee. "You always bring 2, she said without looking at him. He chuckled, offering her one. "Habit, I guess. Or hope." She took the cup, but didn't drink. "You said something earlier," she began carefully. On the phone, he tensed almost imperceptibly. "Did I? Something about deciding Oak Ridge's fate. About Everett Holdings." Silence. She turned to face him fully. "Why didn't you tell me who you really are?" His expression shifted from surprise to resignation. "I was going to. When? After you bought up the rest of the town?" He exhaled slowly, setting his coffee on the bench beside him. "It's not what you think." "Really? Because it feels exactly like what I think." Her voice hardened. "You came here pretending to be one of us. Fixing fences, helping strangers, and ordering pastries like it was all genuine. But it wasn't. You were just conducting research, weren't you? Playing the humble observer." She stood, anger tightening her shoulders. "And what was I, Noah? Part of your experiment? A bit of local flavor to spice up your market analysis?" He didn't flinch, but he didn't deny it either. "I came here to remember what it meant to belong somewhere," he said quietly. "I wasn't sure I ever had. Not really. I didn't plan for any of this." Maya glared down at him. "You knew I trusted you. You let me believe you were just here. Like me. Like anyone else." "I was here," he said. "Just not the way you thought." "Exactly," she snapped. "You were a lie." Noah looked up at her, pain visible in his eyes, but his voice remained steady. "I used to believe being in charge meant controlling everything, buildings, decisions, futures. Then I came here and met you." Maya hesitated. "You didn't change because of who I am," he continued. "You were kind to a complete stranger. You pulled me from a river. You listened. You challenged me. You saw a person, not a name. And for the first time in my life, I didn't want to be the guy who had all the answers. I just wanted to be enough." The words settled between them like dust after a storm. Maya looked away, her throat tight. "You should have told me." "I know." She turned back to him, eyes burning. "So what happens now? You go back to your boardroom and decide if we live or die here." Noah's voice softened. "No. I came here thinking I would make a decision, but now I think maybe Oak Ridge is the one deciding for me." She didn't respond. He stood, his coffee forgotten. "I never meant to hurt you. I'm sorry that I did." Then he walked away, not looking back. Maya watched him go, every step like a question she didn't know how to answer. Noah was gone. No goodbye, no note, just absence. He disappeared the same way he had arrived, quietly, without fanfare, as if he had never really been there at all. But he had been. Maya could feel the space he left behind, like a missing tooth in the rhythm of her days. She still opened the bakery each morning, still arranged the same pastries, still poured the same coffee, but nothing felt quite right. The bench outside remained empty. Every time the bell above the door chimed, her heart leapt before she even realized she was hoping. The town whispered. The mystery man's true identity remained unknown to most, but rumors of a major land acquisition grew louder daily. The local paper ran a small column about a prospective development deal and zoning changes for a resort complex. Then the letter arrived. It came folded in an unmarked envelope, slipped under the bakery door. Maya opened it after closing, hands dusted with flour, still wearing her apron. The logo at the top was unfamiliar, sleek and corporate. But the message was clear. A formal proposal was being submitted to the town council for complete redevelopment of the Riverside District. The goal: a modern resort, upscale shopping area, and luxury condominiums. Several properties would be subject to compulsory purchase under eminent domain regulations, including hers. Her hands trembled. The next day, notices began appearing on bulletin boards and telephone poles. Public hearing, Oak Ridge Town Hall, community feedback on development proposal. Thursday, 7 p.m. She barely slept that week. She didn't bake much either. Zoe offered to cover the counter while Maya took some time, though neither of them explicitly stated what for. On Thursday evening, Maya stood at the back of the crowded town hall, shoulders tense, palms damp. The room buzzed with nervous energy. Business owners, farmers, retirees clutching letters identical to hers. City officials sat at the front table, their expressions grim. When the presentation began, Maya already knew what it would contain. A tall man in an expensive gray suit spoke confidently about opportunity, investment progress. He promised jobs, tourism, economic revitalization. He clicked through slides showing gleaming buildings, upgraded infrastructure, smiling families shopping beneath perfectly blue skies. But none of it looked like Oak Ridge. None of it felt like home. Then came the call for public comment. No one moved at first. Maya's heart pounded painfully. Her mouth felt dry. She stood anyway. The room turned to look as she walked to the microphone. My name is Maya Chun. My family has lived in Oak Ridge for 3 generations. She took a shaky breath. We're not opposed to growth, but what you're offering isn't growth. It's erasure. A murmur spread across the room. She continued, her voice growing stronger. You want to build something shiny and new, but it would come at the cost of everything this town actually is. The land you're targeting isn't just real estate. It's home. It's history. It's people who show up when a stranger's car breaks down or when someone's porch starts sagging. Her voice steadied completely. I know who's behind this, she said. And I know he wasn't always like this. I believed he saw what makes this place matter. She paused. I hope he still does. Silence fell. Then someone clapped. Another joined. Soon, half the room was on their feet. Maya didn't cry until she sat back down. She wasn't sure if any of it would make a difference, if anyone could change what was coming. But for the first time since Noah vanished, she felt like she was standing on solid ground again. And if he was still out there watching, wondering, she hoped he heard her. The town hall was packed once more. A week had passed since the previous meeting, but the tension in the air had only thickened. This time, people arrived early. They brought signs. They brought stories. They brought questions that no polished slideshow could answer. Maya sat in the third row, hands folded in her lap. Her heartbeat echoed loudly in her ears, but her face remained composed. She didn't know what to expect tonight, probably more of the same. Developers in expensive suits, hollow promises, and tired resignation. What she never anticipated was for the back doors of the hall to swing open halfway through the meeting, and for Noah Everett to walk in, not wearing his rancher's hat or scuff boots. No pretense, no disguise. He wore a plain black button-down shirt, dark jeans, and an expression that said he understood exactly what this moment meant. The room fell silent. People whispered to each other. Some recognized him from around town. Others simply looked confused. But Maya knew. The instant their eyes met, she knew he hadn't just returned. He had come to choose. Noah walked directly to the front of the room and politely asked to speak. The mayor, clearly caught off guard, stepped aside. Noah turned to face the crowd, using no microphone, just his voice. My name is Noah Everett, he began. Yes, that Everett. A ripple ran through the audience. For the past few months, I've lived among you. Not as an owner, not as an executive, just as a man trying to remember what matters. His eyes found Maya's again. When I came here, I thought I was supposed to make a decision about land, about numbers, about strategy. But what I discovered was something entirely different. He paused, taking a deep breath. I found a town that still helps neighbors fix their steps without asking why. A place where people bring food to the sick without expecting recognition. Where a young woman jumps into a raging river to save a stranger without a second thought. Maya felt her throat tighten. I came here to determine if Oak Ridge was worth saving. But Oak Ridge didn't need saving. I did. The room was utterly still. No one moved. So here's my decision, Noah said, his voice unwavering. There will be no resort, no forced buyouts, no luxury condos. A collective gasp swept through the room. I'm dissolving the development deal and transferring land use rights to a new community trust operated locally. The people of Oak Ridge will decide what gets built, and what doesn't. The silence broke, first with whispers, then with applause, then with full-throated cheering. Noah raised a hand. I don't need to own this town to call it home. I just need to know it belongs to the people who've loved it all along. Then he stepped away from the podium. Later, as the crowd slowly filtered out, Maya stood by the exit, uncertain of what to say when he approached. He didn't speak at first, just reached into his jacket and pulled out a small manila envelope. I believe you once mentioned dreaming of opening a bookshop, he said. Maya opened the envelope. Inside was a signed deed to a riverfront property formerly slated for demolition. Attached was a simple business permit application, pre-approved. It's yours, he said. Do whatever you want with it. You've earned more than just having a say. She looked up at him, eyes glistening, voice barely audible. You really meant it. He nodded. Every word. A long silence passed between them, but it wasn't heavy. I don't know if I'm ready for this, she admitted. Neither am I, he replied. But maybe we don't have to be. Maybe we just begin. And under the dim glow of the town hall lights, with the sounds of hope still echoing off the walls, they stood side by side. Two people choosing something harder than ownership and deeper than control. They chose each other. The storefront had stood empty for years. Once a hardware store, then a laundromat, and most recently a boarded-up shell on Oak Ridge's Riverside Strip. But now the dust had cleared, the windows gleamed, the walls glowed with warm earth tones, and sunlight streamed through the glass like a promise. Maya stood in the center of it all, paintbrush in one hand, a streak of green paint on her cheek. Noah balanced on a ladder nearby, adjusting a light fixture above what would become the front counter. Try it now, he called down. She flicked the switch. The bulbs flickered, then glowed, warm, steady light. She looked up and smiled. Perfect. For weeks, they had worked side by side, scraping, painting, lifting, laughing. They argued over tile colors, floor plans, and even the aroma of coffee beans. But the disagreements were comfortable, filled with the kind of friction that builds rather than breaks. They weren't rushing. They weren't pretending everything was already fixed, but they were moving forward together. Outside, a handwritten sign hung in the window. Coming soon, Rushing Waters Books and Cafe. The concept had been Maya's, but the momentum belonged to both of them. They didn't stop with the bookstore. That summer, Noah helped her organize Oak Ridge's first children's reading festival in the town square. Kids gathered under colorful canopies to hear stories, create crafts, and drink homemade lemonade. Maya read aloud each morning. Noah handled setup and ran the outdoor games in the afternoons, wearing a slightly crooked book buddies apron all week, much to the delight of every child under 10. It wasn't just the children who participated. Parents stayed. Grandparents volunteered. The town showed up day after day, drawn to something that felt more like family than a scheduled event. Behind the scenes, Noah worked quietly with the Community Trust Board, never seeking recognition. It was his influence that secured the grant for medical equipment upgrades at Oak Ridge Regional. It was his anonymous donation that covered Mrs. Chen's new cardiac monitor and medications for the year. Maya learned about it from a nurse. You know, she said one evening as they closed down the festival, folding chairs and storing supplies, you don't have to keep doing everything from behind the curtain. Noah glanced up from the box he was packing. I'm not doing it to be seen. I know, she said, but maybe it's okay if people see the good you're doing. Maybe they deserve to know. He shrugged. Maybe I'm still learning what it means to show up. She stepped closer. I used to think being loved meant being used, like people only stayed when they needed something. His eyes met hers, calm and steadfast. And I used to think being known meant being rejected. Like if I showed who I really was, no one would stay. She reached for his hand. Let's stop running, she said. No more fear, no more hiding. Let's just walk toward each other. Noah exhaled slowly, then smiled. A genuine, unguarded smile that reached his eyes. Deal, he whispered. That night, they sat on the steps of the future bookstore, watching the river flow quietly beneath the moonlight. The town behind them was peaceful. The stars above were bright and clear. For the first time in a long time, neither of them needed to speak because everything they wanted to say, they were already living. The bell above the door jingled for the 100th time that morning. Rushing Waters Books and Cafe was officially open, and Oak Ridge had shown up in full force. Sunshine poured through the tall windows, casting golden light across shelves lined with paperbacks and hardcovers, memoirs and children's tales. The aroma of fresh coffee mingled with the gentle hum of conversation and occasional bursts of laughter. A circle of toddlers sat cross-legged in the reading nook, listening as Miss Maya, now affectionately known as the Story Lady, read animatedly from a picture book about a talking river. Near the back, two retired teachers debated their favorite poets over cups of herbal tea. In the community corner, neighbors exchanged gently used novels and posted handwritten notes on the Books I Love board. The space pulsed with life, not just as a business, but as a sanctuary, a place built not from profit motives, but from purpose. And at the center of it all stood Maya, watching it unfold with misty eyes and a heart fuller than she'd ever thought possible. Noah moved through the crowd quietly, refilling mugs, straightening books, helping a young girl reach a high shelf. He hadn't worn the rancher's hat today, but the same familiar ease colored his movements. No longer a stranger, no longer a secret, just a man fully rooted in the place he'd chosen to be. By noon, the official ribbon-cutting ceremony began. Maya stood by the entrance with a pair of silver scissors, Noah beside her, his hand resting lightly on the small of her back. Her mother sat in the front row, cheeks flushed with pride, eyes shining. Zoe waved from behind the coffee counter, already out of muffins, but grinning nonetheless. "Thank you," Maya said warmly, addressing the gathered crowd. A year ago, this place was just a dream, or maybe it was a memory waiting to be built. None of it would have happened without all of you. She turned to Noah. "Especially you." The ribbon fluttered to the floor amid cheers. Camera flashes popped. The crowd surged forward, flowing into the store like sunlight through an open window. Later that afternoon, as the excitement quieted and the golden lights softened, Noah led Maya to the back of the store, away from the lingering customers. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, square box. "I've been holding on to this," he said, waiting for the right moment. Maya's breath caught. "Is today that moment?" He nodded and opened the box. Inside was a simple silver ring. Its band was hammered smooth, and set in the center was a delicate, unpolished stone, imperfect and beautiful in its natural state. She recognized it immediately. "The river," she whispered. He smiled. "The day you pulled me from the water, you dropped your flashlight. When I went back later to search for it, I found this stone caught among the rocks. I kept it without knowing why at the time." He looked up at her, eyes steady. "But now I do.